Yeah, I'm living in Kansas. This place is awful for that. We have Sharice Davids. It's like,
just hang on.
By the way,
Sabrina, you made it. Hey, can you hear us? Sabrina.
Okay, you guys, we're on live now, and I'm going to tweet out the link. So just know that that's what's going on. And just real briefly, we were talking, Julie, about how we're going to go through, introduce our panel here, and then we're going to open up and maybe share some stories of what being attacked and trolled on social media, and especially women in MMA. I think there is definitely something there. So I'm going to tweet this out. And Lisa, you're there, right?
Yep.
Okay. And Tanisha, I'm going to tag you.
Sure.
Tag everyone else, or I'll tag people real quick.
Tag away.
I'm tagging. Please talk amongst yourselves. Is there anyone else we're waiting for?
No, I don't think so. Alex, I'm glad you're able to make it. Alex, you're down there. And Sabrina, can you hear me? Audio.
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
All right. I think I've got everyone, but Tanisha, if you could check on that, and here, I'll send it. Okay. Welcome to Writing and Fighting. Get back to my screen. This today is November 4th, 2020, and we're meeting here today with this incredible group of accomplished individuals to discuss social media and MMA. And I brought this group together because I've definitely been noticing behaviors, and I think we need to talk about it. And what I love to do, I tell people, instead of, this is my favorite thing to do. It's not going and watching Netflix. It's bringing together wonderful people like this and just talking intellectual and overthinking. So thank you. But just to kind of give you an idea of an overview of what we're talking about, many experts cite Instagram, Twitter for democratizing combat sports. Fighters, media, fans can directly connect, lessening control of the person, and fostering a shared community. Wonderful things. That's how we're all together. And hello, everyone. And we're on YouTube, which I'm hoping the algorithm is going to good people. And I know I'm part of the system. However, getting into that, this medium has a darker side. Social media and MMA has given rise in toxic, sexist, even misogynistic messages directly toward women, I see, both fighters and media members. And I've said, and why I'm particularly saying women is that I've tried to see how many men there possibly are who have had this experience of being trolled and having sexist remarks. I don't see it as much. I could be wrong, and I want to see all sides, but I definitely think women in this space are targets. Okay, our panel, real quickly, our amazing, amazing panel. I'm going to start off with Julie Kedzie. As you guys know, Kedzie made history when she fought Gina Carano in the first televised female MMA fight on February 10th, 2007. With a highly successful UFC career, Julie is now the color commentator for Invicta Fighting Championships. A graduate from the University of Indiana with a degree in English, Julie received her Master in Fine Arts and Creative Writing at the esteemed Iowa's Writing Workshop, where she was a professor of writing. And thank you so much. You've been a huge collaborator with Writing and Fighting, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. I love this class. You know, I had a class in Iowa that was fight writing, not quite this class, but I definitely looked at your syllabus constantly for ideas. So thank you for that. And I'm thrilled to be here. You know, I love coming to these, and also the change in schedule and everything. I really appreciate that.
Oh, yes, no, it worked out everywhere because we were able to get other friends who couldn't make it, including Charles and Esther, in which I will get to. So thank you. And Alex, so it was meant to be, and I needed you this day. As I was saying, we're all kind of highly anxious, and I have you people to distract me. So thank you. Next, we have Fernanda Prates. How was that?
Close enough. We'll take it.
You know, I'll take it. A veteran sports journalist based out of Rio de Janeiro and Mexico City. Her long career covering MMA started in 2009 and includes serving as a TV producer for channels SporTV and Combate, working as both a correspondent and reporter for MMA Junkie, and writing and podcasting for The Athletic. Prates, I'm going to say that, currently at Fanbyte, where she just recently debuted her new podcast, Best Camp of My Life. I've listened to, and it's like having a friend back on my walks. So,
thank you.
Which is available where podcasts are found. So thank you so much, Fernanda.
Thank you. I feel old when you say like a veteran. I don't feel like a veteran, but I'll take it. It's been a while.
You got to understand that being a veteran, we're all veterans and being females in this word. And I said females. So
females. I could just hear the internet men. Females. But we're allowed.
Everyone, please read Fernanda's work. It's what I call is cheeky intellectual, because you can make me ponder something and laugh at the same time. So
I really appreciate it. That's the main goal.
Yeah, great. All right. Next, we have Sabrina Razzak. Hi, Sabrina. She has as a PhD candidate at University of Toronto and completed her master thesis examining the player experiences of the national women's cricketers in Canada. Her current research examines the intersections of media, race, gender, class, and culture. She intends to study how digital platforms contribute to the formation, operation, and/or challenges of social movements and activism. She's an award-winning curriculum writer. She's also developed beyondaboundary.com, which has created units on critical sport and social issues. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm here in Pickering, Ontario, Canada, and all of us are also waiting anxiously for the results and praying as well. So our hearts are with you.
Yeah, our Canadian friends, because we have very much FOMO right now.
You're welcome anytime.
I'll take you up on that. I also wanted to know that you were a co-writer for a recent article for Media, Culture, and Society called Misogynoir in Women's Sports Media, Race, Nation, and Diaspora, and the representation of Naomi Osaka. So fascinating. I'm really glad to have your voice here and your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. Next, we have Esther Lynn. Hi, hello, Esther. I'm going to call you a veteran of my class because you were on it twice, if you call the symposium. And she's a renowned photographer for various media outlets, including Showtime, MMA Fighting. She's responsible for capturing such iconic images as Chris Cyborg's punch to Gina Carano's head, the face-off between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, and most recently, last Saturday's left hook by Regis Prograis to Juan Heralda's jaw that sent him straight to the mat for a TKO. Outstanding work there, Esther.
Thank you.
Not only did you get one camera, you got two cameras of that?
Three.
Three?
Yeah. So Javonte Davis and Leo Santa Cruz, because we had COVID restrictions going on the fight and stuff like that, I knew I wouldn't be able to move around. And they were letting fans in. So I had to set up a couple remotes and,
oh my God.
that worked out.
Master. This truly is the A team here. And everyone go and look at that shot. It's one of those amazings, like how could you have caught that? So thank you, Esther. I really am happy to have you here on this important panel. Next, also, we have Alex Scaffididi.
Scafidi.
Say, what is it?
Scafidi.
Scafidi. Okay. And Charles, you know I'm going to get your name wrong. And Alex comes from us, who's also a Canadian from Toronto, who you've written, you're a journalist and commentator, I'm going to say a media commentator. So you have experience of the social media, MMA, but you're also a full-time social worker. So I know, thank you for being here, because I know that your life is very busy. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I prefer like glorified fan, if anything, and I do like some writing as a hobby. But we got a lot of good like writers and journalists in here that definitely carry this.
Oh, I think that, you know what, in this day and age, a snarky tweet is as important as, you know, those carry my days as well. And go to Alex's Twitter and you'll get those.
Okay.
All right. Next, also, we have Charles Stagiscu coming from DC and an American and University alumnus. He has a gym owner, so he understands what that life has been like with district martial arts, and which is COVID has been, I'm sure, very challenging. And he's also a play-by-play or color commentator. I forget which one because you've done both. But you're currently with Cowboy Fight Series, which is a amateur pro promotion here in the DC area that's run by Cowboy Cerrone. And Charles, can I ask real quick, is Cowboy Fight Series, any news? Is that coming?
Yeah, so first off, can you guys hear me? I just got a new mic set up here. All right, how about that? That's my technological achievement for the day. So it's still going to happen, but just for coronavirus right now, with all of the current policies and stuff in Virginia, it's pretty much just a no-go until they can get people in crowds in the stands. And for a lot of these regional promotions, without ticket sales, you're just not going to generate the revenue from streaming deals and the small sponsorships they get to kind of afford those events.
Well, thank you. And I know you have some insight into the Twitter universe here.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is quite the group.
I know. Yeah, well, thank you. And you're through it. All right, Brian Biskin.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You're actually in the Hollywood Square center spot for me. So.
Oh, nice. A lot of responsibility.
Yes, it is. So Brian, you're coming from us from Nashville, Tennessee, where you are a filmmaker, one of the drone experts in filmmaking style. And you have many more things that you've done. You've worked on commercials, and you also are co-host of the Art Fight podcast, which we all are big fans of here. And so how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Well, look, I heard it's been crazy the last 24 hours, and I just thought, I just need some sort of respite. I need some sort of calm. What can I do here? And then I see this email and I look at who's going to be here and what the topic is. And I thought, this is going to be super relaxing. So, but here's my mug. There's a Curb Your Enthusiasm mug. So that's sort of my mental state right now. But ultimately, what a great assembly of humans here, and super interested. And also, I understand that it's very timely in the sense that Esther, I know that this was sort of one of the sort of things in your discussion of your exit from MMA fighting that was sort of really stuck out to me a lot. So I'm very interested to hear your perspectives and a little bit more of an expansion into what your experience has been uniquely, because anytime that you're the goat of something, right? It's like, wow, who gets to be the goat of anything, right? So for you to make that move and to expand in your creative work, I'm looking forward to hearing that. And that's a lot of what we talk about on our podcast, the sort of practice and how it meets the sort of paralleled struggles of combat sports. So anyway, honored to be here, and I'll be mostly listening, but this is gonna be awesome.
Oh, well, thank you, Brian. And so now my co-host and collaborator, friend, Tanisha Singleton, PhD. Dr. Singleton is an experienced media professional committed to making business equally meaningful, inclusive, and fun for everyone. with expertise in fandom and digital communication. Tanisha earned her PhD in media psychology, blending innovation with science to boost engagement and community involvement. She's also producer of, is it Crux XR, a co-ops of Black, did I say that right?
Crux, but yeah.
Crux.
Crux works.
Apologize.
No.
You know my pronunciation, I do it to everyone. So it's a co-op of Black technologists working to turn Black artists into owners, one creator at a time. She's on the board of directors for the Black Girl Hockey Club. Woohoo! A nonprofit dedicated to making hockey more welcoming to Black and marginalized communities, and the host of another new podcast that we've introduced. It's called I Have Questions, and it is the best because you hear her questions.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Yeah, I just launched that podcast, and I certainly do have questions. I don't understand what's going on outside, and that's primarily what the show is about, and how that kind of links into the outlets that we embrace to try and stay safe, sane, and entertained in all of this crazy shit that's going on right now, which is very much relevant to this topic and this outlet and platform. So as always, thank you for having me and allowing me to hold a red party cup and a Jill Scott t-shirt, Jill Scott and chill, because that's honestly where my mind is at right now with what's going on the TV. This is a whole mood that I am fully embodying right now. So much appreciated.
Excellent. So what I want to do to start this panel off is actually, I want to humanize this story of social media and MMA, because I feel like I'm looking at the screen and I see accomplished journalist, photographer, a fighter, a commentator, PhDs. I don't know how many are here. But also
the one, I think.
What was that? Sabrina, one. But yes, okay, one PhD and one, and so, but also victims of sexist hatred vitriol on social media, and also offline, as Alex was telling me, that perpetuates both ways. And I've asked other people this because I don't believe that men are being treated like this at all. If please send me examples, because I don't want to be generalizing here. I'm sure there is, but overwhelmingly, it happens to women in this space. So if someone could talk about their experience, I know, Fernanda, you have a tweet that you wrote an article on. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your story.
Yeah, it's so silly to me that like this became such a thing. I wrote a tweet when Joaquin Buckley had this amazing head kick knockout that everybody was talking about a few weeks ago. And I wrote just the dumbest freaking tweet ever. I just wrote, I want to marry this knockout and have its babies, which it's just a silly thing you say to a silly occurrence, right? And everybody was just saying, damn, and what, like it didn't process. And I wasn't entirely even sober. I will peek behind the curtains there. But then I just wrote the tweet and went on with my life, and it started getting some traction. I think we were all excited about the tweet, got RTs, got everything. And then like, as I'm going through, bless Twitter, by the way, because a lot of the replies don't show up to me anymore. I think because of the filters. So I'm not like automatically exposed to the cesspool, but like, I started looking at the replies and then it went from haha, funny tweet and stuff and whatever to like calling me a slut and saying that I was horny and that I was a gold digger. Well, Drigger, the winner on that one, said. And it was just like weird. Like it just took such a weird turn. And at first it was 1, 2. So you're kind of like, people are creepy. Some people are just weird. But it got to a point where so many that I actually asked my boyfriend, like, is this a code? Like I legitimately thought I'd used like an internet code for like a porny thing. I don't know, I'm Brazilian. And I literally went into the Urban Dictionary to see if I had used a porny code just to make sure. And then I asked on my Twitter, like I asked people, I'm like, guys, did I say something that I don't know is weird? And some of it was like, there was a person like scolding me for sexualizing Black men because Joaquin Buckley is a Black fighter. So I'm like, is there a racial component? Like my mind just like, I was really digging to see if it was something that I said inadvertently on my silly tweet. And then it wasn't. Like, it really was just a lot of people saw that stupid joke as an opportunity to call me names and to assume things about me, and that it just turned it sexual, like weirdly, like that was not sexual at all. And then I ended up writing a full article about it just because I was stunned. Like, but my boyfriend saw, like, for the first night, I was like thrown off by it. Like, I was just, that is so strange. And it's kind of like, it's uncomfortable to have people you don't know just saying stuff about your sexuality. And then one guy said like, well, this is your only chance to have children. Like, and then another person just said that, oh, the knockout doesn't fuck lesbians. And then it just started getting really weird, like just strange. Like, I was getting really attacked for something so silly. And as a person who like writes about sort of controversial, as a person who says the truth on Twitter, I get a lot of people. I understand that some tweets are going to generate some kind of reaction. Like, I understand that some things I say are going to land in a fan and I'll get some hatred. But that one was just like baffling to me. I did not understand it at all. And that was when you said to pick like, that's just the most recent example I can think of. It wasn't that bad. Like, I muted the tweet and that was it. I still looked, and because we're human and weird, and I, for one, cannot leave well enough alone. But like, it was just such a strange occurrence. And to me, it was just very representative of just kind of like, these people are just lurking in the shadows and waiting for the opportunity to pounce and to say nasty shit to women. And they'll use whatever opportunity they get, even if it's the silly opening they see it, they'll take it. And to me, what bothers me the most about situations like this, it's kind of like, when you complain and when you say something about it, like, this is not cool, people say, oh, it's just the internet. Like, there's a gaslighting thing where it's like, everybody gets that. Everybody's a jerk on the internet. You shouldn't be paying attention to the internet. You shouldn't be listening to trolls. And it's like, dude, we've been spending our entire lives looking at screens for the past 6 months. And you're going to tell me that I shouldn't be affected by what happens on the internet? Bitch, the internet is my life now. It's all of our lives. Of course, we're going to be affected by it. Of course, we're going to give it a lot of weight. It's how we're communicating with other humans at the moment. So yeah, that was long story long because I have no power of synthesis. That's what happened.
And are you going to make a point? Can I also, because I'm glad you gave us that personal story, I'm just going to read some statistics because you guys know I'm a nerd. And I want to give voice that this isn't just random things that people are blowing up on. The Amnesty International did a poll in 2017, women aged 18 to 55 in the UK, USA, Spain, Denmark, Italy, Sweden, Poland, New Zealand. First world countries, I guess we could say. And 23% of women of these 18 to 55 have experienced online abuse or harassment. 33% in the US, a third of women have these attacks going on, at various levels. Listen to this in terms of how they're also go to a deeper level of sexist or misogynistic comments. Of the women polled there who had experienced this harassment, more than a quarter said they'd received threats of physical or sexual assault. And, and I could see, Fernanda, where yours were going about they were getting much more targeted. And 3/4 of women, 76% who've experienced this abuse have to make changes to their online behavior due to these kinds of things. Meaning the woman is supposed to maybe ignore it. The woman is supposed to maybe change her handle, change her settings and stuff like, which is very important. And then to even get, I guess, a little darker, when we look at health effects, there's definitely, a correlation. I'm not saying causation, with depression and suicide related, which have jumped with the onset of social media, that you can't ignore. It's increased a staggering 47% from 2008 to 2017. 50% almost. And like we have to acknowledge some of these. I have some more statistics that I'll put away for now. But I think, Tanisha, I know that you may have a point, and I want to bring up some other stories because, especially Esther, because I know this is very thick, and you actually sparked this whole panel because I was talking to another session and I couldn't get over. I had told Brian, and I don't know if Julie were there, I was like, we've lost Esther. And Brian had to tell everyone watching, she's still alive, guys. But it meant that, and I wanted to understand, how this impacted your life. So, Tanisha, do you want to maybe direct that and then we can talk to Esther?
Sure. Yeah, because there's so much and there's many layers to this topic, this conversation, right? And a lot of that got exposed to me as I was getting my PhD and looking at media psychology, right? So the relationship or patterns that you can see between media consumption and human behavior. What you're putting in, how is that now changing your out, right? Like, what are you doing? Or how can you have it boost the human experience as opposed to being a complement? Well, what we've seen is as technology and media evolves, so do now the opportunities to be assholes, because those connections increase. And so, but the underlying issue, if you're asking like, what is this all about with social media and MMA? What you're really asking still is just a human question that we've been dealing with pre all of this shit, which is just, why are we mean to each other? Why would somebody bully? Why would someone murder? Why would someone commit a crime? Why would someone do something negative? That is what the core thing is. It's just now the means, now the opportunities to do so have increased, right? Now we do it anonymously. Now we can do it because there's no accountability anywhere. We're seeing that in office. We're seeing that in this country. We're seeing that absolutely everywhere. There's a lack of accountability. And so we can get into reasons of like, okay, well, maybe this person bullies because they weren't hugged enough as a kid themselves, right? And there's like some other like psychological issues or whatever. But to me, the more I like pull up my hair and thinking about all of this stuff, it's like, the reason doesn't change the result. At the end of the day, it does not change the result. And the result is that people will have negative self-esteem, negative self-worth. There's all of these metrics now that people are using to get confidence in themselves. Like, oh, this blew up, this got viral, I'm trending, all these likes, stuff like that, people commenting. Those are all esteem building new values now, right? Because currency isn't just dollars and cents anymore. How we define value, it's just like, the seven, what is it? I've never even read that book because I hate chicky stuff. But what's that thing? Love languages. Like there's 7 different love languages or something. But those are different ways that people find value, right? So it's like information, numbers, metrics, all of those things, all of that should be considered still a currency because there is a transaction at some point. But even darker than that, we've obviously bullying in traditional spaces can lead to self-harm. So does it in this digital space. And we have to stop treating it as if it's different. And that's where things like media literacy and ethics come involved. And we're seeing now, per Fernanda's point, like Twitter and platforms now are starting to take more of responsibility by including more features like, all right, now you have control over who can reply. Now you have control over who can even see your posts, right? Because those are now digital platforms' way of trying to referee this space that is growing faster than they can even keep up. And so the results in the meantime is great people like us still will be now subject to all of the toxic things that were going on outside, now also in a space that we were trying to just be entertained from. It ruins the experience. I replied to Fernanda's tweet. I was like, can I babysit your knockout babies? This is awesome, because I was watching live too and I thought it was amazing, but it's ruined the entire thing, right? And like, that's what the toxicity of all of this stuff does. But again, my point is that the reason doesn't change the result, right? And so it's like, almost if you want to think of it like viruses or COVID or something, right? Like, doctors aren't looking for the cause of it right now. They're looking to make a vaccine so people can live around it and live with it, right? So in spite of it, so people can continue to live without thinking about, you know, having their experience diluted or perverted in some type of way. That it's a weird analogy, but that I'm thinking of right now, but it's at the same time, that's how we should be spending our time. Is I think it could be better served in more innovative ways instead of thinking so much about what the reason is, because the reason isn't going to change the result, right? So, but we've become obsessed with that point, but it does ruin the whole thing. And so, yeah, I'll shut up for now, but Esther, yeah, would love to hear anything you want to share about kind of your experience with this and this subject and how it's, you know, made you more conscious of the things that you embrace and do on a day-to-day, even when it comes to professional life.
Thank you, Tanisha. So what kind of spurred me to leave MMA fighting, it had a lot to do with the fact that a lot of people think of me as the photographer of the site, but in order for me to get like a full-time job in journalism, which a lot of people on this panel might understand too, is I had to take on more responsibilities than just being a photographer. So I was also the engagement editor for the site, which means that I oversaw the social media and produced a lot of the YouTube shows and policed the comments. I was serious about that. I really do actually kind of try to police the comments. I go through and I try very hard to get rid of some of the worst offenders. And over time, I've been doing that for like the last 3 years. And over time, it just got to a point where I found myself hating all of humanity and not finding anything redeeming in anyone because everyone said something terrible. And it was getting to the point where like, I find myself wanting harm to come to strangers because they can't behave online. And I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't want to sit here wishing that other people would just die or go away just because they're jerks online. But it's hard not to feel that after a while. You just lose faith. And I didn't want to do that. And so I departed for that reason. And then in addition to the fact that I felt like, I had gotten to a certain point in my career where this is not something I need to do on the side. But then, one of my MMA fighting, one of their most popular posts ended up being my retirement clip on Instagram, which I didn't realize was a thing. And the comments proved why I left, right? So half the comments were like, who is this? I don't care, blah, blah, blah. And then the other half were like, she lost my respect. And it doesn't matter that she's a good photographer. She lost my respect when she said Black Lives Matter. Huh. And I thought, well, this is the reason why I don't want to do this anymore. If I, we get so many fighters saying, oh, why can't I have an opinion? Why can't I? It's like, no, you can have an opinion. It's fine. But you should also realize that I'm going to tell you you're dumb for your opinion. I should be able to criticize you and critique you, especially if you're saying something that's not true. And it got to the point where I just didn't want to fight it anymore. I didn't think that I was actually there's not too much of a difference to be made in this space. And I didn't know if this was the most productive use of my energy. So
I completely respect that, Esther. And I guess what pains me is that as the GOAT of sports photography, I'm even going there, you guys. If you were a male, you would not have to deal with this. Possibly. I think, and that makes me fucking mad. Sorry, Professor Kidder. And, I think that that's what we want to go here, because it makes me think, yes, you're talking about like we could ignore it, or decide to maybe leave the space. But perhaps we're giving the trolls, which I'm kind of curious, Julie, because you've been in this space since, probably MySpace. I don't know if, yes. So, because I actually read this article called Anyone Can Be a Troll. And this speaks to you, Tanisha, in that what we've given with that phone or, a computer is that you can actually reach out when you have a feeling now. And they say that there's 2 triggers to it. It's the mood, and then the access exposure, because they can actually feel like they can interact with Esther. And I'm just wondering, how this is, if this is something we can ever find a healthy relationship, because I want women to be in spaces and not having to maybe leave. So thank you so much, Esther, for sharing that. And you know what? You've created this conversation, a lot of that. So Julie, can you give me your experience with this?
Well, I should start by saying I'm an asshole on Twitter, and getting that out of the way. Pardon my language. And I think it's important for me, given the privilege that I have as a human being, the access that I have, and everything like that, to always first be self-reflective and be like, okay, I have maybe contributed to some pretty negative things online. At the same time, I don't want to contribute to toxicity. And I think there's a difference between being angry online and being toxic. And one of the things when we see women leave these spaces in particular, or non-binary identifying human beings leave these spaces, I don't know if human being is the right term. I mean, of course it's the right term. Sorry. I'm just saying, I don't know if that sounds too clinical, or it's like saying female. But, we non-binary folks leave these spaces, or female people leave these spaces. It does leave a gap in the conversation that's just, it's impossible to fill that. We need those voices. We need everybody's voice. But at the same time, you cannot be expected to exist or to contribute to spaces that are eroding you, right? You can't. And so, it's impossible. You have to look out for yourself first. And, with me, it's like what my online experience has been is like going from trying to be a, hey, everybody, let's be cool brand, to fuck you all, to, oh, you know what, I could actually use this platform to amplify some voices, which doesn't mean I don't get pretty snarky. I do. But I do feel like I shouldn't be necessarily calling people out without acknowledging that I can be an asshole as well. I don't like bullying. And I hope that nothing that I've done online has been bullying, but I have been bullied quite a bit. And in particular, to share some experience. And this is, of course, the problem is we also all try to help each other, and a lot of helping each other, or when people try to help each other, it involves inserting themselves into a conversation instead of stepping back and listening. After the last, not this election, but the 2016 election, and I'm not going to disclose any names or do anything like that, but I was trying to argue my point online about how this is a really freaking terrible thing for this country. Like, I mean, it's a really terrible thing to have Donald Trump as this country, and terrible things are going to happen. And it's not that terrible things had not been happening. And I had some acquaintances and friends who were military affiliated. And when I would say my opinion to them and they'd say their opinion back and we'd go back and forth, their followers, extensive amount of followers, particularly in the military and I like to dress in military gear communities, which I think are a little bit different, would give me rape threats. I mean, I had open DMs. It was rape threats. It was, I'm going to kill you. You're a stupid bitch. You're a little girl. You don't know shit. And I expressed this to a mutual friend with these people. And immediately that person was like, oh, I told them to stop. I'm sorry. I'm not giving enough pronouns here. And that's out of me trying to kind of maintain some privacy on this, which is funny in an online forum, but I'm digressing. But I guess the military people who I was arguing with, their fans, friends, buddies were threatening me. They themselves were not. They were just being incredibly condescending to me. A mutual friend, I just said, man, this is really frustrating me. It's really bumming me out. They don't know that their fans are doing this to me. And that friend said, oh, I talked to them and they're going to stop being mean to you online. And I was like, I didn't want you to tell these, they weren't being mean to me online. That was not what I was at. I needed to vent this. I want them to know that their little fan bases are threatening to rape me. And that's a bad thing. I tried to express that to those people directly as well. Didn't fly. But it's just one of those, so much is lost in the conversation when we don't address people directly. And I know that was a very oblique way of saying that because I didn't, I wasn't entirely specific. But, and then when I express things directly, a lot of the time it's just like, oh, you're a bitch feminist, blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't know, you never did this, you never did. It's like, no, I didn't, but I can tell you not to rape me or not to say rape people. Like, that's, I guess it's an oblique way of referencing this. I also went through quite a lot of shit for my Joe Rogan episode. At some point I'll publish that essay, but it was an interesting experience because it was something that I brought up in talking to him that, oh, I know that being on here, people are going to tell me they're going to rape me and they're going to kill me and that I'm an idiot, I'm this and that. And while it was airing actually, because I backtracked the timestamps on it, people were saying that. The thing is, that's disgusting. And I don't think men don't get rape threats, but I also think they're the dominant voices in most of these conversations. So when they exit, I'm not as upset as when a female or a woman exits, or somebody who identifies as a woman or identifies as non-binary or in any other group that's not considered the voice. That's super upsetting to me. And those are the people who are almost always the most targeted.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because I think it just becomes like, is the juice worth the squeeze at some point, right? Like, is this worth it, right? Like, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even do my job anymore, and so that it just becomes extra layers of obstacles that women have to go through in this space that is one primarily already masculine, right? Combat sports. And then now you add the social constructs that come with that in every space now, right? Digital, traditional, in home, at venue, like all of that now just becomes compounded. And I think the disparity is huge between what men have to go through with that and what women have to. That goes back to like one of our earlier episodes from this year, right? Like when we were talking about gender with MMA and the way that when you see something, say something, right? The way we have to check people and the way that Sanko did that, right? And then almost like change the guy's mind at the end, right? Like, oh, okay, thanks for clarifying, like, fuck off. Because if you were on the street, the likelihood of them even coming forward, probably slim. Very, very few, right? Would probably do something. But it's the anonymity, did I say that word right? Yeah. That comes with being online, right? And then with that, it's a 1-2 punch. You're anonymous and you have there's no accountability. What are they going to do? Take your account so you can make another one and you can tweet from the can anything you want that's going to be harmful just because. So it's like, what are people getting out of that, right? Like if you want to, for a minute, look at the reasoning. It's right. The same thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, I cut you off. Keep going.
I was just going to say, like, it's almost the same way that, when serial killers and after Columbine and stuff, people say, don't say their name, don't make them trending because that's what they wanted. They wanted the recognition. They wanted to be famous, and even in the most heinous of circumstances. I've noticed that happening over the last couple of years. Anytime that there's like a mass shooting or something awful that's going on, most of the times people online was like, don't say their name, don't trend the killer, because they don't want to give them the satisfaction of becoming viral. Because even if it's negative, some sick people already will get off on that in that space. And so it's almost like they enjoy being checked in some type of way, or they want to see that kind of banter. But it's sick because it's just nasty. It's like, what the fuck? And the fact that this is so close in this country right now shows a much more core issue as to like why this is going on and what that has to, the effect that has on women specifically.
And I think to that point, or in extension of that, what a tragic loss it is, because we're losing geniuses like Esther. We're losing texture, and we're losing beauty, and we're losing it's becoming homogenous, boring bullshit.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, in those spaces, like, why would you want, and no one would want to go in a space where they're, you know, it's making them not happy to do their job or do anything. Right. I don't speak for you, Esther. I'm just trying to paraphrase kind of what you were saying. But then it's just, and then people complain about how boring it is to, you know, this and that, everything's the same. Well, yeah, motherfuckers, because you're getting rid of the people who make it art.
Right. Because I think too, it's like, we've always wanted to have a community, right? We wanted a community like to talk like this and stuff, and we support each other. If I see shit, I'm going to be like, fuck you, you know, like we do that now, especially online. It's like, look what this guy just said to me, and you have your community back you up now, right? But if you don't have that voice in you, which is fair, right? Like, it's the Me Too, all of this stuff. We've seen that retaliation is a thing. We've seen that, you know, it's very, very hard to relive and retell and share all of the horrible experiences that have happened for you. So that's when the community has to just like come in and recognize and, like you said, police itself. But that's why I want to ask Sabrina too, because I know that's what your dissertation is going to be about, and kind of how digital spaces can be used in like an activist moment in a way. And I know we're working together on the Black Girl Hockey Club stuff and looking at how a women-run sports media company can now become a source of radical Black feminism, awesome, you know, social initiative and activations and stuff. So what a little bit can you share about like your experiences and having seen the data, because you've done that and you've published that already, but what can you bring in this conversation that looks at like how we can spin this community in our own to outnumber the assholes in the most possible way I can say.
Thanks for that. So, you know, part of my journey to this scholarship too, I've recognized that there's different schools of thought, and the Faculty of Information, which deals with power and technology, they're very pessimistic on the ability for the internet to provide those democratizing spaces, because it is owned, operated, and designed by white males, and it aligns with that patriarchal order. So we are really in those spaces as not seen as belonged in those spaces. We're not seen as the norm automatically. And it mirrors society, right? So we're stratified in society by race, class, gender. Sports is stratified that way. MMA is stratified that way. So we build these cultures online that are quite similar to it. What we have seen now, and what the research is really pointing to, is that what the internet does provide are these echo chambers. So with these echo chambers, there's a term called homophily too, where you do post something like Fernanda, when you posted that too, I'm sure you got a number, that tweet that became, you know, a source of massive vitriol. You probably got, you know, massive support that accompanied the vial, but which pile was bigger, right? So it's the pile that's bigger that often rises to the top. And the Twitter algorithms and the big data algorithms, the biggest revenue generators are racism and sexism. So that's something too, that the information that rises to the top that will support the most media or advertising traffic is those tweets that have the vitriol in them. And that's the way the internet is unfortunately designed. It's not really designed to support these voices from below. But where there is power, there is resistance, as Foucault says too, right? So that's something where we can have, take a little bit of solace in how that shows up. You know, Tanisha, you brought up the Me Too movement, and one of the books that I did read, you know, with all of the Me Too movements across the world, one researcher looked at how they were organized and the success and how to measure success, which is very hard. How do you measure a hashtag? How do you measure the success of these communities online? And what she found is that closed Facebook groups and ones that were a little bit protected from the public were the ones where the feminist discourses really gained traction and support, and the women themselves felt more empowered and gained that knowledge that translated to offline movements and offline behaviors that progress the movement. So when we think about what can be possible online without that blend of offline movements, we're not going to see much. So, you know, Esther, it was heartbreaking to hear that story too. And you'll see stories like that, unfortunately, going on and on. The collective that was supporting Esther, I'm not sure, again, I don't know the space enough well to say, but the collective that comes together that supports Esther or supports the ability now for people to be in that space like Esther, those voices and the tactics offline have to be matched, and if not even more so, for these conversations to keep going forward and matched with decisions that initiate the change. So that's what I would say too, is that the one thing that the internet can do is that mobilizing and recruiting of voices. So you'll get more followers that maybe support you, which is what you want. And what we also see now is that humiliating and shaming people, like I think Tanisha, you brought that example up, it's something where it can produce that little bit of change because the accountability piece is going up, but that accountability piece has to be matched with policy and laws that inhibit these kinds of actions as well, like where the community itself needs to recognize that those need to be in place too for that support to happen.
That part, 100%, because then, yeah, it becomes then, like you said, the about the algorithms and what's being fed. Alex, I remember you just did that a couple of days ago, right? Like you showed 2 tweets that you posted, right? One after another. Here's something happy, positive donation, and then a negative one. And the impressions and engagement you got for the negative one, 4 million 100 times greater than this positive one. So it is a thing. So then that becomes how we have to now go to Twitter, right? Like that's when you go to the platforms and force them by being loud and whatever fucking else we have to do to have them be more diligent and recognizing this is a need, that's something that they need to fix. Because
right. Again, I also think too, going after the platforms and the mammoth of the platforms, the kind of chipping away we can do at that versus organizing from below and the grassroots and the movements offline.
I agree.
I do believe that is where my efforts would go than trying to convince Mark Zuckerberg to be more responsible and not make as much money.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way. Because I think that's the point of psychology, or of community rather, right? It's being able to show that your values match your actions.
Yeah.
Right. And if they don't, like, show me your receipts that this is what you do, and using the safest spaces that we can finagle out of this to make our communities more strengthened. And then, like you said, taking that offline, because that's what lifestyle is, right? It's behaviors. It's not just a hashtag. So how can we go back into, making these more they're positive in terms of human connection?
Mm-hmm.
I think like a lot of people live, I'm sorry, Nancy, cut you off, but like, just real quick on that note, like, I think still people seem to still live in sort of a fantasy land where the internet is somehow totally separate from our lives, right? I was thinking about what Esther was saying, like, because her job was to look at that horrible shit. Mine isn't, and I'm really sad. I don't, comments make you sad because people are going to say horrible things. And MMA fighting, particularly, they have a very active comment section, so it's awful. MMA Junkie is bad too, but it's just less people, so you're less exposed to the most horrible thoughts of people. You have a story like Danielle Nickerson, who was married to a UFC fighter, and she came out publicly saying that he had abused her. And of course, the comments were, a lot of it was support. I'm going to say, like, I was somewhat positively surprised by the ratio, but of course, a lot of it was bad. And it's hard as a person, right, to read that. And it's not even an attack to you, it's an attack to your existence as a woman. And that's, I think, what a lot of men don't understand. because they'll say, oh, I'm trolled on the internet too. And it's like, oh, trolls are trolls. Like, oh, they say bad things to me too. And I don't think people understand the existential nature. And I come from a privileged place of being a white woman. So, you know, you have those layers of privilege that a white man on the internet, sometimes it's not even like, they just don't really understand. What I try to explain is sort of like, imagine a person, you're coming into a communication with a person where you have to prove yourself as valid to that person. I don't think a man who like is used to just communicating normally understands that entering a communication and having to show them why your opinion is worthy. And on the internet, like we know the theory, we know the gist of some of those comments, right? We know the tone, we know the quiet parts in there. And sometimes you express that like, no, this was bad. And a lot of people will diminish that, saying, no, it wasn't that bad, because they simply don't understand. And to me, the craziest thing about all of this is what a person would normally go and say, oh, don't look at the comments, or don't look at the replies, or just mute, or just block, or, you know, just turn off the computer, or, oh, I took Twitter off my phone, it changed my life. Like, good for you, but that's just not how we live our lives anymore. It's the same discourse we had, like nudes. Don't want your nudes leaked, just don't take them. Dude, we live on our smartphones, we live on our computers. I just don't think some people have woken up to that reality yet. Like, we just can't pretend like we lead these separate lives and the internet is just this active choice that we make in our day, just, you know, for fun, for porn or whatever. No, it is our lives too. So yeah, to me, there's just all those layers in that.
Great point, Fernanda. And I want to make sure this is bringing up questions because I know that we have Sabrina and Tanisha here in terms of like what these behaviors and how, as you're saying, Fernanda, this is our lives. And why are some behaviors? And I really want to make sure we get to the men in the room. We have a new one, Josh. Hello. And Alex, I really want to bring your voice into this conversation because I know you've experienced this. I'm curious too, when I made me think about this, and I really just want to toss it off. Why are behaviors that would not be appropriate in real life, such as going up to a woman and saying, I want to rape you, who you don't know? I mean, I'm thinking also, it seems also men, women, this is very much a gendered characterization that women are the ones who use words and we're the catty ones, mean girls, where men are supposed to like use their strength and they have their fight and then they're fine. But it seems almost reverse online where men are using words and the cattiness to, go after women in ways and using, and that's something they wouldn't do in person. So I'm curious, maybe, and Alex, you're nodding, maybe you could also speak on this.
Well, yeah, like this is something that like it comes to mind because this literally happened yesterday for me when it comes to like things that men say online that they wouldn't say in person. So like if anyone saw my timeline yesterday, I was just going off. So what had happened was back at UFC 230 on the Friday of weigh-ins, there was a meetup, like a media meetup for Middle Easy. They did one at this bar and I went and I got to meet some like really cool media members. I got to meet like Nicole Boss and I got to meet Diego Lopez and Andrew Lawrence and some other cool people. And everyone was like doing good. And then these two random guys showed up and they heard about the meetup like through Twitter. So they showed up, they were clearly inebriated, like they were clearly drunk already. And so I don't know how they kind of approached us, but they started talking. And one of the guys was standing right next to me. And every time he would kind of say something, he kept like touching me. Like he kept like putting his hands on my shoulders and he kept like rubbing my back while he was talking. And I was just like, what the hell? So like at one point, like I was kind of nudging him off and then I like physically removed his arm from me. And then he just kept doing it. And then I like got vocal and I was like, hey, you know what? Like you could talk and stuff, but you don't need to touch me. Like, that's not necessary, you know? And he said to me, he goes, oh, well, that's how we are where I'm from. We're handsy. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I'm not from where you're from, and I don't want you touching me, so don't touch me. And there was two of these guys, and only one of them was the one touching me, but the other one stood there and he heard everything I was saying, and I was being very vocal, and he didn't say anything. Not that I expected him to say anything, but he didn't say anything. Shortly after I left, whatever. But fast forward, and this happened in 2018. In 2019, this is the first time I saw this Twitter account pop up under a thread. I had blocked someone got mad about it. And this person comments under the thread saying oh, she's such a bitch. I've met her in person. She's so stuck up, blah, blah, blah. And I clicked the account and I'm like, I don't know who this is. I don't recognize the person really. And then yesterday, this person pops up again and says, I met her and she blocked me because I called her out for being stuck up or whatever. And I was like, oh, hell no, I remember who this is. And it was the friend of the guy that was touching me. And I was just like, what the fuck? Excuse my language. But I was like, why is this dude, who wasn't the one that I was getting irritated with, but he was they were both drunk and irritating. Why is he mad at me for this? So I quoted it, calling him out and being or what happened is I was at a meetup and you were being drunk and obnoxious and your creepy friend wouldn't stop touching me. So I was trying to get away from you guys because he tried to put it on me. And it didn't make sense to me why this person who had nothing to say in person, he didn't call me out in person. He didn't say anything about me, my behavior or my attitude. But on Twitter, I found him saying how he met me and I was the stuck up one and this, that, and the other, calling me the hard R and all of these other things. But yeah, I don't know where that kind of
Thank you.
bravery comes from.
Yeah, no. And can Sabrina, can we bring in what motivates these behaviors that he did do this in front of her?
Yeah. And, it's when we think about the larger picture here about, how men and women are socialized, what's acceptable and what's not, and the culture of sports that we continue to perpetuate and we continue to support. It's unfortunately the reasons why men feel that they can act such ways and continue to, because they're supported in that sense. The boys will be boys. It comes from my culture. It's quote unquote acceptable, and that translate online. And Tanisha spoke a little bit about the anonymity of people being able to say such harmful messages online. It's almost like a license that they have now. They can pull out that card because they have, and they will continue to get away with it. As we increase our accountability, that does become, and Me Too really is a proponent of that, where a lot of men are a bit fearful. But then there's the backlash. We saw now in some countries where men were suing women for suing them. So there is this backlash that accompanies this rise of support for women's movements, racial movements too. We've seen white nationalism increase because of the support for Black Lives Matter. And that is, and Angela Davis, who I hold very close to my heart, she does believe that we're at a point now where it might tip. And we're close, as we can see. We're at that point where the intolerability is going to be a bit more than the tolerability for it. Are we there yet? Do we need to continue fighting? Yes, we do. But when we have people exiting, like Esther and a lot of these voices, and it's hard. And I think people are speaking to also, it's hard work. Fernanda, when you publish that, the traumatic experiences that we have to keep on sharing to collect that support too, that's exhausting. And Angela Davis says she went to jail for 18 months and she's still she still has hope, right? And some people, you know, after one tweet or after one, they're like, I'm tired, I'm gone, that's it. And Esther, you know, you spent a long time, I don't know how many years exactly you were in the business, you know, experiencing this, you know, but day after day, like it does wear on you, and it's at what cost, right? And it's what cost for the movement. And we know, and that's why even these movements now are not even try to have the new movements, especially the ones that are included online, are moving away from leaders, because they know how much leaders are sometimes face that vitriol more when they're the face of the movement, and also the face of death threats. When you become that poster child for the movement, that's when you get it the most. So it is a risk. And same with the athletes that we know that speak up, that consequences from the Black Fist in the 1968 Olympics to Colin Kaepernick. You know, there's some people that get it more. Megan Rapinoe is celebrated, but race plays a factor into that, right? A Black player on her team chose not to kneel because she would be read a lot differently. So we need those white voices to speak up more when it comes to this, when it comes to these movements, and we need the collective we to continue to push the dial and move the dial.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say quickly that to piggyback off of that, it gets exhausting, right? If one party, if one community of this feels like they have to carry the burden and continue this stuff. I know we both retweeted this quote from Angela Davis, who I'm so fortunate I had her as a professor in undergrad at UC Santa Cruz, where she was emeritus. I know. And I didn't know who, I didn't like sign up for, of course I would have, but it said lecturer, right? Or like guest professor or some shit. Like it didn't say who it was going to be. And then I'm sitting there like bored as hell. And then I see her afro shadow and I was like, no way. And she came in and I was like, oh, like for 12 weeks straight, front row center, right? But one of the quotes that she said that I think is pertinent to this point is, you have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the damn time. All the damn time, because it's so exhausting. We can't just rely on Black women or BIPOC communities to carry this burden by ourselves. It has to be a collective thing, because just as we started this thing with saying, and you reiterated, Sabrina, like this is a core white male thing. That's this entire lecture right now, like all of this, it's founded like kind of in that toxic culture that in this community specifically, being like MMA sports, we know we're already outnumbered. And so the voice is like, we have to be louder than that. And it's an all the damn time kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, you know, Tanisha, I think that we should bring in some male voices here, because I want to make sure that, you know, because I think that it would shed light, and I want to get everyone's. And so Charles and Brian, and now Josh, I'm going to go to you, Charles, because when I told you that I was bringing the panel together, you're very much like, Nancy, I understand these Twitter bashing things. So, you know, I do think that we can't exit men from this experience. So I want to know kind of what your thoughts are.
I mean, what could I really say after listening to all that? You know, let me just tell you, just so you guys can kind of laugh at me a little bit and understand how.
Fix it, Charles.
Hey, listen, if I could, I would today. I had one back and forth with a verified person, and they were just really mean to me, you know, and I was like, oh God, it like hit my stomach. Like it was, and you know, you guys don't know, I'm pretty polite on Twitter for just in general, right? They didn't say anything too bad, but it just like, it hit. I was like, what? Like I was being so nice. How could they be so mean, right? And I was bullied when I was younger. Like I'm accustomed to violence and all that stuff. So, you know, this whole idea that, oh, it's the internet, it doesn't matter, that goes right out the window. So the thought of having to deal with what you guys deal with, I mean, how could I comment? I would be like, you know, I'd be in a corner. I'd throw my phone off the balcony and that would be that. I would never go on the internet again. So I think if I could add anything, and this is not to be a cop-out, but I don't have the answer, you know, other than I wish people would be nicer. I think the positive should always outweigh the negative. And so many people are accustomed to, when they hear something, they always kind of focus on the bad, right? Like I know if I brought home a C and an A, nobody was paying attention to my report card with the A. Everybody's like, well, what happened to that C? What were you doing? Right? Maybe that was the Italian household. I don't know. But I could tell you there's a lot of moments where there's such positive things that might that might be mixed in with all this negativity, and you don't see that, right? You're focused on the bad because it's so much louder. Esther, I got one for you real quick. So it was right after jiu-jitsu class. I was cleaning up the mats and my boxing coach came in, and there was a couple students on the mat, and they were looking at these pictures. It was actually Javonte Davis, his knockout, right? And they were basically talking about how it was a slip, rip, uppercut, beautiful. I literally cut them off and I started bragging about you and how I was on the same panel with you, right? And then they were like, "Oh, that's so cool." I was like, yeah, I know her. Like, not really, but we have a picture. We were on a panel one time. She's the best, So, and I can tell you, just to add on to this, the next time I see them tomorrow, next boxing class, I'm going to tell them, yeah, I was on a call with Esther. It's not a big deal. She had all this camera set up. There was 3 of them and she was using switches. And I think when you think about the impact that you as an individual, I'm using you as an example, as a positive one, that you've had on so many with your work, the positive really does outweigh the negative. It's just you're constantly seeing that negative. You're constantly seeing that bullshit. There's so much more realness, which is what, and real positiveness and that's why everybody's, bragging, or maybe just me, bragging about being in the same room with you, right? Because of all the good you've done, how good you are at that. So this isn't a pitch to get you to come work for Cowboy Fight Series or anything like that. But it is just to let you know that there always is going to be more positive than negative with good people. And it's just a matter of trying to filter out through that negative.
Because I think that's great. And I'm going to make a joke, but it's how you said at first, you're like, "Oh, what can I do?" You just did it. You already did it because you're a gym owner, right? So you control that space. You make sure that space recognizes the good of others in this space. That's how you control this whole discourse, because you are making your contribution in the way that you can. There's no way I'm going to be able to talk to fucking Mark Zuckerberg. I don't want to. I don't want to talk to, all those people. They're not only just, they don't want to hear from me because they'd be fired and or sued, but they're so unreachable, right? But what we can do is in our space. And that's what people have been talking about all year long with Black Lives Matter. What can I do? Control your space. That's how you can make contributions. That's how you plant little itty bitty seeds so that we can start to seed more of the positivity so we can focus on that. Because if our community, just like we talked about, taking this shit offline and making it into a lifestyle and positive in our day-to-day, we do that by making sure that the spaces we go, the lanes that we stay in, have more stops along the way. Oh, check this out. And, that's how you integrate more, so you have made a contribution. That's exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. And so Charles, will you tell when you go to the gym, tell them also about, Esther Lynn, did you know that when she controlled the social media, she would have to read all these things and that, because I think that exposure to this to know is another opportunity. So thank you for sharing that. And Brian, I'm very curious, your thoughts.
Well, so yeah, this is a lot, right? So I think what I could most meaningfully probably share would just be maybe just the lenses through which I've been sort of looking through different aspects of this conversation. So one of the things that does not escape me is sort of the history of media, right? And if you just media studies 101, right? Like Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. We're looking at, how do I even start this? So the printing press is invented, whatever, right? 300 years ago. We're still in ailing sort of notions of copyright law as it relates to creativity now, right? Because of this new technology that then made lots of facsimiles of something and distributed it to a lot of people. Also, what happened is a lot of people got more dogmatic and more entrenched because they were more isolated. They had less of an immediatism or an actual experience with people and the things that are of the consciousness of what they're reading and enthralled by in their communities and all of that. So I see this sort of, I'm looking at it through the lens of sort of media studies and technology and then I look at it, you run up to the last 20 years and it's oh my gosh, right now we're trying to reconcile toddlers with cell phones pushing buttons with their emotions, right? We're in the earliest stages of the most primitive, this is not to discount obviously anybody's experience or anything. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to look at it through the context of, wow, the most burgeoning sport in the most sort of strange sort of twist of like misogyny and violence and all these things, but all this beauty and all this art and all this delicate, sort of understanding and humanity. Like, mixed martial arts is the craziest thing to be sort of tied to right now. And then the only other thing that's next to that that's equally as crazy to be sort of tied to is Twitter, right? So you look at the last 20 years and it's like, okay, everybody, this is the frontier. Everybody, the pain that everybody's feeling right now, I feel like there are nuanced things that are going to come that are going to make it easier for us to do, Sabrina, like what you were talking about, sort of reversing the directionality of how we're thinking. Like, let's not try to take on the monolith. The technology itself is sort of an endless platform that can be leveraged. So there's going to be fragmentation of those things. I think the exciting part of the internet in the earliest stages, 20 years ago, whatever, was everything can come together, right? And then now it's like, maybe not so much. It's kind of like, do you want to have a party and invite the whole world, or maybe just like a carefully curated mix of interesting people that you think will yield particular conversations? And then I leave that at, Nancy, that is ultimately your best skill, as evidenced by this panel.
Oh, no. Well, thank you. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, that we got to remember the vehicle that is being used here, that before social media, to kind of troll someone, you would have to find them, drive up to them, and I guess that was and like yell at them. And now you can do it with a click. I can, contact someone I'm not happy with, and I get some sort of feedback, right, from that. And then this is the other thing I think, Tanisha, Sabrina, and Josh, I want to make sure every voice is heard in this. What is the thing about, is a troll also wanting a connection with that person, in terms of what are they like? That's the other kind of motivation. And I don't want it to be like, the boys who would pull your hair in kindergarten and they really like you. I mean, but what is it that they're ultimately trying to obtain?
I think they're threatened, they're insecure, and they're worried that their space is being compromised. So if more women participate in MMA, they're worried that their pie is going to get smaller. And that's a lot of people don't really comprehend that, having more representation does not equate to you losing your job and you losing your space, right? It's the same thing as music. Like, if we have more country singers and more rappers and more, rock artists, everybody's still going to choose. There's enough for everybody. So I think there's that. And some people will attest that to me. Of course, there's, a certain number of people in leadership positions. I understand that. And there's only a certain number of people that can go into these professions. Notwithstanding that, I think so that there is that visible threat too, with that space now being somewhat smaller. Like, the support for watching women's sports will somehow take away the support for men's sports. It's that fear too that is filling in, right? Like, if we have more women photographers, will they only catch photos of more? Now will they just only do photos for women more and highlight that more? So their whole sense of being is threatened. So by them spitting out those messages, it's like, know your place, stay in your lane. So that's why you see, stay in the kitchen, all of those type of narratives, is recognizing that you need to stay within your role and do what you do so we can do what we do.
Can I go to I'm going to say veterans of women in MMA, women's in media and MMA, Esther, Fernanda, Julie, because you guys have been there from early on. Is this what is also coming into play, in that now it's easier for people to kind of act out in this space that they, a masculine space that they feel threatened by?
It's interesting, just going back to the troll thing, because what Sabrina was saying reminded me, there's a YouTuber I really love. Her name is Natalie Wynn. Her channel is ContraPoint. She's a trans YouTuber, and she talked a lot about incels and like just angry white men on the internet. She sort of became known as the troll whisperer, the white men whisperer, and she was treated as that by mainstream like outlets. She didn't put herself in the position, but that's kind of like how she got recognized. And she did this amazing analogy. It's obviously a very long video that I won't be able to convey here, but like she did this really good analogy about how she, when she was in the early stages of her transition, she would go into forums and just sort of like forums where people were deliberately mean. Like these are places where insecure men, and with the incel community, there's a lot of that. They go and feed their own insecurity and self-hatred in a loop for themselves. It's really crazy. Like incels, they go and post pictures of themselves, like, and have others analyze them and be like, oh, you're never going to get laid because your chin is too weak. Like that loop of, it really goes to feeding that what Sabrina was saying, just it comes from a place, I think, of deep insecurity. And she equated it with her insecurity, like the ways with not defending them, because the way I acted out was sort of self-harm, and they act out in a way of harm to others. Especially if you're talking about the incel community, which has produced actual literal murderers like Elliot Rodgers. But just like, I thought what was her so interesting is that she had so much compassion and empathy for a group that was actually targeting people like her. So she's like a visible trans person, because she had her full transition really on YouTube, like really publicly. So I thought that was interesting. But going back to MMA, like for me, what I think, and this is just a guess, I don't have numbers, I think, and this again ties into what Sabrina was saying, I think there was, when you're a novelty, you're embraced. So I think at first, like I felt a little alone in that place where there weren't that many women reporters. In Brazil, I sort of had to walking along with me. They were in our last panel, Evelyn and Anaísa. And so I had sort of company, but it was just a very unique position. So in a way, I feel like at first it didn't look as threatening, maybe because it felt like a novelty, really. Like I was a pet, like I was so foreign. I wasn't a threat. Like I was in a borrowed space inside that general area. And then when there started being more of us and more of our voices and more of our opinions, like, right, more than just our faces. But, when we start being decorative, I think that triggers sort of the instinct of protection of my piece of the pie here. Or is this going to change the identity of a product that has so far been made for me? Because the identity of, say, the UFC, we have Invicta, of course, but that's a big exception in the space. The identity of the UFC to me is a very a product that it has a very specific audience. You have octagon girls who look serve no function but to please the gaze of the straight men. And you have a whole product that's really built around that identity. So I do think that there might be an element of, oh, these people are coming in and this product that, caters to me, that is mine, that gives me everything that I want to see and feel, might change, might give me something else,
And and I'm curious, Esther or Julie, because like what you're talking about, that tweet goes right to that. By wanting to have babies with a kick, you're invading my space where I am in the locker room and I discuss that. Now you're, taking it hostage and making it something else. So it's innocent for others who think that it's adorable and something. It can be very invasive to someone who's threatened. Julie and Esther, I'm curious. This is really interesting because you guys do have the knowledge and of kind of the history of seeing women when you guys were even more of a minority. And do you think that there's been a rise, maybe a pushback, because we've talked about women in MMA. We had a whole panel on it earlier this year. And we were talking about it in a celebratory sense that, we've come so far. Look at women in boxing. They never really are still struggling. But look at women in MMA, It's part of their package that UFC understands. We've got Invicta. Could, though, there be something now that's pushing back? Esther, do you?
All right, I was trying to unmute here. When I started working in MMA about 13 years ago, a lot of that stuff, we're saying like the kind of things that men wouldn't say to you in person or whatever. Actually, sometimes they did say those weird things to me in person. It was just that there weren't so many of them, My first couple of experiences shooting cage side, I had judges hitting on me mid-fight, talking to me during fights, or people commenting how I got this position or I got that access because I'm cute or whatever. And I wanted to go back to Fernanda's point about possessiveness of MMA. It's that when I was only taking photos, I didn't really get any kind of hate. Nobody really said anything. A lot of people made comments about my appearance or that I'm here because I'm cute or whatever, I'm a girl. But it wasn't until I started doing the focus series where I actually started analyzing what I was seeing. And once I got away from just describing a photo or describing my technique to describing their technique, the fighters' techniques, or consequences of their actions or any of this stuff, I got a ton of hate. And it came from once I actually started really speaking on a subject that I feel like I have expertise on because I've seen thousands of fights up close, but because I'm not supposed to talk about it, I'm just supposed to share the photos. That's when the pushback really started happening, when I started appearing on, a couple of podcasts or whatever, and I made these appearances. That's when it really started coming through. Like, that's when all this hate started coming through.
Wow. Showcase. Julie, can I ask you've been a fighter, commentator, have you seen as the role changed and you became more of a threat in terms of you can be as you say, a position that's comfortable. Have you found that you had different treatment?
Yes. It's funny because when, you see the expression of position that's comfortable, I don't know if I was ever in a comfortable position as a fighter, given where I started. I don't know that I was unaware that I didn't belong in the space, because when I started fighting, I was very young and very brash and, just wanted to do it. And I'm going to take, but I mean, they did say things to me in person. Like mid-fight, I remember hearing a guy say, "Oh, watch out for the guillotine. I want to fuck you in the mouth." Like, you hear these things, and you're just like, dude, you're ringside. Who are you? Like, why do you have a ringside seat? Why are you one of the judges? I don't know if it was a judge. I don't know what it was, but it's like, those things happened a lot. People did say the things to me, as Esther said, and it was less. I feel like the one great equalizing power of the internet is everybody gets to be equally nasty, or they feel they can. But also I look back and I can think of my career as a lot of things I could complain about, or this went against me or that went against me. But the truth is I was pretty protected in a lot of ways compared to some of the things I've seen, even with, having people pinch my ass and do this. I'm not saying those are acceptable behaviors toward anyone, male, female, however you identify. But I think I was protected in a lot of ways, but I think that a lot of those forces protecting me were also the ones that were preventing things from changing. When I hear the expression, "stay in your lane," that seems to be an expression I hear a lot from white men who don't stay in their lane, who feel that they can take the photographs, but they can also commentate on this, and they can also do that. They have that right to analyze fights. But, someone, Esther, who, she shouldn't say that kind of thing. And that stay in your lane mentality, I mean, yeah, it's prevalent. I've talked about internalized misogyny before, and I've talked about that, and it's definitely a huge struggle, something that I have to think about in my career and what I allowed to happen to myself because I didn't know any better, or the myths that I perpetuated about women in sport because I didn't know any better. I didn't have the confidence maybe for that kind of self-examination. But like a narcissist, I bring it back to me, and I don't know if it's necessarily about me so much as, one of the things that I thought was actually incredible that you said earlier, Tanisha, was about control your space. Because I think that the problem is that even the people, and I am speaking a lot about white men, white male promoters, that control your space, it's very easy for them to bow out of a position of authority and lay back and be non-political about things when it is their space, and they should be speaking up and they should be loud about it, because that is allyship. It's not sitting back and saying, oh, I'm not going to get into that. Or oh man, that's happening without my guy. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to stay quiet, let it boil over. No, you get in there and you fucking fight for people. And I find myself as, I'm a media member in a sense. I'm a color commentator. I'm an ex-fighter. I didn't have that successful of a fight career. I mean, it was successful to me. And in terms of like what, but it wasn't one of those world champion, like, that kind of thing. So that was something that I did, and I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of what I accomplished. I'm proud of the work that I do in Invicta, and I realize the flaws and the mistakes that I've had with Invicta as well. And I realize I have a mouthpiece there, and that's one of the reasons but I also think there are so many people who have a mouthpiece, who have positions of power, and I am speaking specifically to white men and white women in this sport who have a little bit more say. They speak the fuck up. Don't let it happen and think it's going to boil over. I remember somebody saying, stay in your lane. Oh, and many people say stay in your lane. I also remember, like, especially with the Colin Kaepernick, when the Colin Kaepernick kneeling action began, and people saying, don't talk about that, you're MMA. I'm like, I like football. I mean, I don't necessarily know what a running back forward something or other is. I like football. I like sports. It is my lane, because I'm a human being in this country and I'm a voice that can speak. And other people, I remember somebody that I respect was just like, well, he's going about it the wrong way. And I'm like, the fuck is your problem? He's going about it the wrong way. He's incredibly powerful, and this is an incredibly respectful and beautiful gesture to be doing for political protest. And it's like, the thing is, if we are in this privileged space, so many of us, and I'm including myself, I'm in a privileged space to speak out or not speak out. If you're not speaking out, then you're in the way, and you get the fuck out of the lane. Yeah. If you're, just get the fuck out of other people's way, because they've got work to do. If you're not going to amplify and you're not going to listen and you're not going to do your best to try to change things, then just go. I mean, I know, like, I tend to ramble a little bit, but I'm pretty impassioned on that. Like, sports is politics, politics is sports. This is our job. This is what people listen to. This is what they do. And there should absolutely be a myriad of opinions. But if those opinions are about how somebody shouldn't have a right, or they shouldn't be treated like another person, well, then those opinions are invalid to me. And I do want to speak a little bit on this in terms of, I have some regrets when it comes to the fighter Fallon Fox. I've never really spoken about this very much. I met her once, and I don't think I actually knew who she was. I met a lot of fighters a lot of the time, and I think we had a brief conversation, and just the hatred that she had, and the way I should have been speaking up more, and I wish I had been more educated, because I failed her. I don't know what divisions or unifications or what needs to happen to allow MMA to open up so many more divisions. But I can't remember, again, I don't know why I referenced the Joe Rogan podcast twice. I remember him and I talking, and him saying stuff that was actually completely scientifically wrong about and me just being like, I don't even want to fucking address this. It's just going to be a dumb argument. He's going to talk over me. And no, I should have addressed that. I should have been louder, and there's times like that. And so don't stay in your lane. Do not stay in your lane. Take all the lanes and go forward and charge. I mean, and if you see somebody struggling, man, give them a hand, unless they're assholes.
Thank you. There's so many things I want to take with that. And like, I'm actually going to ask a question from it for Tanisha and Sabrina, but Fallon Fox, if people just don't know, is a transgender. I hope I'm saying the right transgender fighter who took a lot of heat when she, fought, and basically, and it was very vocal from Dana White, Joe Rogan, Ronda Rousey, people just saying hurtful things that she shouldn't have been allowed in the octagon as a female fighter. And, a lot of people could say, well, that was 2013 or 2012. And I still think that we need to make more inroads. And what you're also bringing to point, Julie, is when you talk about why you didn't say anything. And this is something that I'm so impressed with you, Julie. And this is something I'm going to take from this conversation, is that as women, we've been gendered to be very courteous and respectful. And, don't make a fray, don't make a ruckus, get out of the way. And I think that that's the behavior maybe that we don't need to do anymore. We were told to do that because that makes us feminine and people in society would appreciate it more. I appreciate when you tell people to fuck off on Twitter and, behavior that women shouldn't do in real life. But I think that is something we need to stand up and not try and be, this courteous, respectful. But I really appreciate that you said that. And I think that Fallon Fox would love that you've said that about her. And
my apologies, I don't mean to talk over you. I did want to say what you said about being courteous. And Sabrina, I think you said something about tactics. And I don't remember. I'm trying to write quotes down from you guys, and then I can't read my own writing. So my handwriting's terrible. But the thing is, the tactics, the bludgeoning tactics, I know how to do those. All that comes out of this is I'm gonna scream. But on Twitter telling people, no, fuck you.
And I think the balance of that too, the call out culture has to be balanced with the call in culture as well. Because I think that there is the people that will always be on the side of, women don't belong in this space. And then there'll be the people that women do belong in this space. And it's the people in the middle that we want to try to work with. And some of the people who are at that far end of the spectrum too, calling them in, so Cornel West was on Fox News. I don't know, Tanisha, if anybody else saw that as well, right? And, those types of conversations and calling the men in who, increasing the compassion and increasing the empathy. We saw that with this movement with Me Too. We saw that with Black Lives Matter. That is what we are trying to build, is this increase of empathy and compassion and foster that understanding. So I think that there's room for all of it, because I do think we need the radical voices there to say F off, and we do need the softer voices, and we do need the ones that will compromise and work. I do believe that there's space, and there should be space held for all of those voices to balance it out. So the kneeling, the protesting, all the versions of it do contribute towards advancing. And I think that your journey of learning, as we all are, and coming to grips with, looking back and being reflective, I think that's super, super powerful. And being in the position that you are in and recognizing that you do have more of a voice, and also that the systems that you're in at times don't enable people to speak up. And there's also that fear too, of fear of a job, fear of whatever it is, where they don't choose to speak up. And that is something, other ways they speak up or other ways they show up, or conversations that they had. Sometimes it might not be forward facing on Twitter, or it might not be, as visible as maybe other tactics, as I said too. So I think that we have to also make space for all of that, because we need all of it.
No, I was going to say, I think that's super important too, because all of the spaces and voices and stories that we have aren't the same. We all have our own thumbprint in that, so to speak, but it's because, Julie and I, we have no problem saying go fuck yourself, right? But then you may have somebody else that doesn't want to do that, or doesn't want to call them out. And I got such an overwhelming realization of that. Like, a couple of weeks ago, like I went on MSNBC and I disclosed a very personal story about an ongoing lawsuit that I'm in right now with my former job because I was racially and sexually discriminated against. And the amount, I think I may be caught up in the amount of DMs and emails and connections that I've gotten from that with people that I do not know all over the world, just saying, your story empowered me. I wish I said something back here, you know, thank you for sharing, because they got strength through the vulnerability I showed, right? So there is strength in vulnerability, but I had the balls to be on TV and say that, right? I had to, I mean, if you see the clip, like people say I looked okay, but it's like, I was dying inside. Like I was super, super nervous. Like, oh my God. But the people got strength from that. And so it's the example that we can set as leaders in our individual spaces and communities, that we underestimate how strong we are also. And we understand the power that our stories individually can have also. And so the variance of spaces and stories and volume of voice, right? You can have the ultimate in Julie, and then to like someone who doesn't even want to say something maybe, right? So that's where the allies have to come in, and those voices in the middle of how can we make this right? Because that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to make this right.
Yeah.
That's another small cruelty of it too, right? Sorry, Nancy. Just the fact that when you're like a sample size or whatever, like how many guests has Joe Rogan had? And like, how many do you think are now feeling bad that they didn't defend Fallon Fox 8 years ago when the conversation was so much different, right? Like you take, as a female fighter in that position, like I don't envy your position at all. I was literally thinking that the other day, that if I got an invitation to a platform like Joe Rogan's, I would never, ever take it, because you're put in a position of responsibility of calling him out on shit that the thousands of men he gets there who aren't there to represent nothing but themselves are not feeling. Like you put yourself that pressure because now you feel like you had the opportunity to speak up for something more, because you're obviously a great person and because you take on this position of an ally, which I think we all have to be. I totally agree with you. Like I'm in a weirder position because like I don't think Americans would call me necessarily white, not Trump's America for sure, but like I grew up amid a lot of white privilege in Brazil. That's a whole other conversation, but yeah, I grew up with that privilege. So I am white. I grew up with white privilege. I'm white. So I totally understand that. But like at the same time, and I understand what you're talking about. We talked about this before, the internalized misogyny, because we all grew up with it. I've said some horrible things about other women. I've thought some horrible things about other women. I deleted everything I said on Twitter from 2014 before, because I just said horrible shit in there. Because what I look back now, I'm the same as you. Like you have to reconcile those things. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes like, Jesus, I was a crap fucking person. And at the same time, we were socialized that way, right? Especially you, because you were so in the middle of it. Like I was even as an observer, so I had that cushion. But like you were in there living it, and to have that presence of mind to at the same time, like you not being afforded the luxury of just representing yourself, of just being able to go on a show and saying what you think and what you want, because like you feel the responsibility of defending other people. It's kind of cruel in itself, right?
Yeah. Such good thoughts, and I want to keep this start going. Josh, I just want everyone to have had a chance to talk. You came in mid panel.
I did. Sorry about that.
So Josh, he is a writer, formerly of Fightland, the editor of Fightland, excuse me, and the writer of Why We Fight. I even have it right here. And so we're really good friends. I'm hoping to do a project with Julie and yourself, because we love looking at combat sports and its intersection with culture and society. I'd love to know your thoughts as you've watched and listened.
Man, well, I mean, I do apologize for coming late, and I feel like I probably missed out on a whole lot. And it's been amazing to listen to everybody, and I feel a little unprepared to speak, and like maybe I'm just here more to listen than anything else. Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I'm just taking a lot of stuff in. I hope that's okay, but
No, that's okay. Actually, Josh, can I ask you a question?
please, yeah, save me here. I'm dying.
Are you surprised by anything you've heard? And you've only actually come in, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the experiences we talked about of, you know, Fernanda put a tweet out and got very sexist, misogynistic responses. Esther had to deal with a ton of hate when she was, or she had to oversee the social media at MMA Fighting. And I bring this up, and Alex, you had both, by the way, offline harassment bad too. Like, you know, as we've been talking, like we're almost like kind of like forgetting that that exists. And in your experience of being shamed online, like Josh, is this something that you have been aware of?
Yeah, I've definitely been aware of it, and no, I'm not surprised by it. That doesn't mean I'm not horrified by it when I hear specific examples, especially from women that I know and respect from our community. And I was extraordinarily disappointed when I heard the news, as we all were, when I found out that one of the reasons Esther was leaving MMA fighting and the MMA world for a while was related to abuse she was receiving online. I mean, that was just heartbreaking. I would love to say that I was surprised by it, but I'm not surprised at all. And it's, you know, I'm constantly disappointed, but I mean, it's why I've sort of taken myself out of the world of social media, just because I think that, you know, as Brian was saying, this sort of thing that started out as being a thing that brought the world together, I think there's something inherently diseased about it. And it's just a world I don't really like involving myself with. And just to sort of, I mean, you know, it's an idea you guys have brought up several times now, but just again, sort of amplifying that idea that the anonymity of it breeds its toxicity. My wife had spent the last couple of weeks texting to voters in swing states trying to get them to vote for Biden, and has received, you know, just like, you know, obviously like the responses have just been like, the things that people will say is just like, you could barely imagine thinking these things. And these people are willing to text them to a total stranger who's literally, their only sin was, hey, have you considered voting for Joe Biden? Like that's literally what you text. And the things that the awful things, sexual, terrible things that she's gotten back. And then she and I spent several days this past week down in Pennsylvania, and actually knocking on doors for Joe Biden, and met several Trump voters, and they couldn't have been nicer people. I mean, they couldn't have been sweeter. I mean, you know, I can't stand their politics, but they were very polite and weren't mean at all. And it just really drove home that idea that there's something about the anonymity of the social media world that it just makes it so toxic. So no, this is my long-winded way of saying it doesn't surprise me at all, and I wish it did, but.
Yes. No, and you know, I just knowing we've said some things about how white men have a different privilege, but what I think that what is telling about you, Josh, is you listen and you acknowledge this and you represent, and I think that's something that, you know, is very important. And I know we need to start wrapping up. It's only been an hour and 52 minutes. You know, I could go on, you guys. I'd like to get some last thoughts, you know, in terms of, you know, from Sabrina, Julie, Fernanda, Esther, Alex, Tanisha, you know, on kind of where we're going from here. I think we've said it, but there are any other things that have sprung to mind?
I just really wanted to quickly just backtrack to, a lot of people, and this is pretty much I didn't just quit because of the abuse towards me. I quit because of all the abuse I was witnessing, you know, just the sheer amount of racist and sexist comments under everything, not just directed towards me, but to all the fighters, to everyone, the fighting among the comments. All of that was just like, it was more of that. And now I do feel, I feel like a quitter a little bit for, leaving the space for that reason. But it was just to the point where I felt like, I don't know if me arguing with these strangers is ever going to get them to change their minds. And I think that's what it was. I was really nervous about this. How can me blocking, 20 racist comments, how is that contributing at all?
Yeah.
And I think that's really what for me, it was like, it was the whole community. It was like, I met all these wonderful people. I know all of you, and I met some of my best friends online through MMA, and it's having a really hard time reconciling like that group and this group from the louder group online,
Can I say that? And I would love to see if anyone else, Esther, you're the reason we're having this discussion, that these individuals came together, and you are, the genesis of this. Yes. And, so please, like, you should not feel at all that you quit. I almost think that was like, torture to have to review that, all of that day on day. And like, that's what they do to prisoners of war or something, So you have all my respect, and thank you, because I think when you didn't have to say it. And I think you mentioned this, that you weren't going to say it when you were taking your resignation, but you did. And I am so glad you did. Does anyone else have any final thoughts? We've really brought up some ideas of, activism, about, support, building this community. And, I think this means we need to talk more, and we have to know that we're sticking around, and we're going to be here for each other. Yeah, Julie.
Well, on that, Nancy, Sabrina, you also spoke earlier about, the groups that can come together, maybe the closed groups. I have no experience in organizing or grassroots, sort of thing. But for my part, I would love, in closing, for us to somehow do something like that together, not only on this YouTube channel, but to find a way so that to combat, at least, we can't ever, but combat that shit Esther had to go through. Like, however we can, like, we need her voice, and we need her photographs, and of course you're still contributing them, I know that, but I would love if there's a way for us as a group to organize something where we're supporting each other, and we can bring more people into it, where we can have that positive, I want to say positive backlash. I know that's a contradiction, so I don't mean that, but just some way of a way of fighting back together, in a actual literal, like, doing it.
Yeah,
because I feel like I say a lot of things. Very much.
I think that, Nancy, you're providing such spaces, and just final quickly thoughts, Althea Gibson, I'm not sure if anybody knows her, I'm sure Tanisha does, the first African-American tennis player, and Serena didn't, and Venus didn't show up till 4 decades later, right? So, but then now you see Serena and Venus, and you see Naomi Osaka, you see, and you see so many others, all of the other names are escaping me right now, but you see so many others now coming into the fray, but people in the media don't talk about the amount of work that Serena and Venus did off the court. So it's something that their whole family did. It was really a movement, and the WTA played a role in that. So I think that the accountability and the work that happens within MMA, it also is keeping the sport responsible and accountable to how it treats the people who are upholding the sport. And that is not only the fighters, it's the photographers, it's the writers, everyone else that makes that machine go. So the more protection for them, it is better for them. they are unfortunately about the bottom line. And so more diverse voices means more, we know the business case model, but now we're shifting our discourses to a moral one where it is, yes, sure, it can increase your bottom line, but now it's morally the right thing to do. So I think that we can go on that momentum, and having these spaces and those closed groups to really strengthen people's ability to amplify their voice is a requirement. Happy to help do anything I can for that.
Love this group.
So sorry. I keep cutting Nancy off all the time. I'm so sorry. I'm the worst.
Sorry in this group. So go ahead.
Sorry. No. Okay. My final thoughts. I first wanted to I'm gonna get sappy. Like I just wanted to thank both Sabrina and Tanisha because I feel like their perspectives. Like I sort of know Julie and Alex and Esther and Nancy and like obviously I have met Tanisha before. Like just the way that you guys brought this conversation together. I for one like I didn't have a notebook and felt like I should be taking notes. It was just like really enriching. So thank you for that. Like Scafidi, she didn't talk a lot today, but like her Twitter, honestly, like she's having some conversations and has the like presence of mind to have some of the necessary arguments that I honestly like right now I'm not having them in, like I feel like I ran out of steam for them and I shouldn't have. And I really fucking appreciate her presence online. Like I feel like you keep joking that you're not a journalist in this, and yeah, maybe you're not by formation, but like just your spirit, like just the patience that you have and just like your willingness to like really put yourself out there and expose yourself to that kind of sludge to argue them, honestly, super fucking admirable. Julie, like I'm obsessed with Julie. If you ran for president, I would absolutely vote for you. Granted, the bar is a little low right now, but I just think you are absolutely amazing. There's no secret there. I think everybody sort of knows how much I'm a fan of you. I've had you on my podcast and told everyone about it because I was bragging. And like when Esther just final, because I'm talking a lot, I monopolize this conversation and I'm sorry. Esther, like the minute you said, I heard that you were leaving MMA, like my first thought was sort of figures, because like I knew sort of how much it was eating at you because we've had the conversations, right? Never to the point where like, yeah, I'm thinking about quitting because I don't think that, you know, my podcast or your podcast were the spaces for that, but I felt that from you. And I know, like I knew of the crap that you had to deal with personally, but also like moderating comments is the type of thing that I can't even imagine. So I can absolutely, dude, I can't even. So I can absolutely understand sort of the need to preserve yourself and your sanity. I sort of just did that. I was away for 3 months and probably wouldn't have come back right now if it wasn't for a good job offer. So like, I completely understand that. Like I'm on the same boat as everyone. It's just sort of like, oh, just it's Esther. You know, my boyfriend was saying like, oh man, we're missing all the great Esther shots and Fight Island and stuff. But I think that's normal that we miss that. But like I can absolutely understand your position. And not Leslie, just Nancy, like thank you for putting this together and just like insisting and making sure we were all here. Like I know how hard it is to organize multiple people. I would say impossible. And just like your commitment to having these conversations is really admirable. So yeah, I guess thank you all for being so awesome.
Thank you. And, you know, if anyone, I'm going to post all where people can find you in our YouTube and your Twitters because I want people to reach. And my last thought, Tanisha, I want you to kind of wrap us up. I want to make this community happen to foster. And I know I'm just a professor, but I see the importance in looking and having these generative conversations. It's changing people's opinions or giving them an insight to something they really didn't know. And I appreciate it. So thank you all for coming.
Yeah, no pressure for big G's. I didn't know I was going to have to say something important at the end. Are you kidding me? I don't know if I have any more important words, but other than what I just put in the chat, which is, everyone deserves their flowers. We all deserve to have our stories told, our voices heard, and we're allowed to have fun in however fucking way we want, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. We can't, erode or have our confidence eroded because of horrible behavior of others. And it's natural to feel that way, but we have to be louder. And it's unfortunate that we have to do more work into, being able to enjoy a space together. But like, that's kind of where we are. And if you need to tag somebody in, I'm here to do that, because I have no problem telling somebody to fuck off. And I know I can tag in Julie, and I know I can tag Alex and Fernanda and a bunch of people, because we have to have each other's back. We have to. And that's how we'll make this offline as well, when, clearly it's safe to do so. And we can all, fist bump and all that stuff, because this has to be offline. And that's what lifestyle is. That's what community is. This shit is just meant to, boost our experience as people and connections, not replace it. That's what this stuff is meant to do. And so the minute we start to look at this being the end all, the way Brian mentioned, Marshall McLuhan and the medium is the message, like that's when you played yourself, because this isn't the point. The point is that that's how we all got connected. Now what do we do with it? Right?
Put up the bat signal when you need to, but then also let's talking together offline on Zoom. That makes sense for, or whatever we have to do safely. But I really appreciate it. And to any, young person out there watching, like, let us know if you're ever feeling that you are being harassed, or if you have mental health consequences. I'll even put some like links to places, because this is really a very serious mental health program. I know Alex is a social worker, and we have Sabrina and Tanisha who are in the kind of psychological fields. So I just appreciate that we had these women, and I'm taking the last word. I didn't mean to, because I couldn't help it. I'm sorry. It's the professor like saying, the last thing. But again, this group right here is such highly accomplished women who've done it in a field where women didn't exist 50 years ago, on the ring side or cage side, in the cage, and so let's support each other. And, I want more professors of fight writing. I want to have that generation come out. So thank you again. And until next time, actually, can I tell everyone about next week? Which you guys, I'll tell you all. We have Zadine Kareem. Am I saying that right? Yes, he's coming. Alex.
Kareem Zidan?
Yes, I said it wrong. I knew it. You guys,
I don't know if that's how you say his last name, but
yes. Oh,
come back too, because we have your whole list of the things that you curated from his research and stuff. So yeah, be back to
Kareem Zidan.
Zidan? I don't know.
We'll ask.
Yeah.
We'll ask that.
He's done podcasts. I could send you guys they're in the thing. So I think his name is.
I apologize that I mangled. I mean, that's just me. I mangle a name even when I think I'm sailing free. All right. But he is a journalist who specializes in geopolitics and has written a lot on Chechnya, on their dictator who has his own MMA gym and doesn't believe that homosexuality is a thing. That's Kadyrov. I think I got that name. And other things he's really written about and gotten heat. And we got to support people who do that. So you guys are always part of my community here at Writing and Fighting, and hope to see you back. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you all.
Calls everywhere.